In a small town like Cogdell in Georgia, a black family tends to get treated two ways. First, there's the treatment that comes to us from being in the black community. That's warm and supportive and encouraging and quite wonderful at times. But also, we live in an enclave surrounded by people, some of whom were enemies, Ku Klux Klan, so that there was always the threat that if you stepped out of line or made the wrong move, you could wind up, being beat, chased, put in jail, or even hung or lynched. So I was, as a child, exposed to life coming at me from two different directions with two different messages. One was, as I said, warm and supportive in that you are somebody and it's a wonderful world and God is out there taking care of you and there were heroes in your life. And every Negro History Week at school, we would deal with these heroes. Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Phyllis Wheatley. We, as children in school, were required to memorize something, a poem of Paul Ernst Dunbar, or an oration by Frederick Douglass or whatever. And on the occasion when Negro History Week came, our parents would come to the school and assemble in the auditorium. And we would then be paraded in front of our parents, and we were required to stand and deliver. I remember having to do a poem by Paul Ernst Dunbar, when your mama says the blessing and the corn pond's hot. And I was doing the poem, and I forgot, where I was. And there was the teacher on the right looking and teacher on the left looking. And don't you know, without missing a beat, I composed a whole stanza, rhyme and all, about that chord poem. It went right on through. It was then I discovered that maybe I had something extra.
You had talent.
Yes, I did. If I could pick up on Paul Ernst Dunbar, maybe there was hope for me in that line of work.
Ossie, did you live in fear? You talked about the Klan being around, surrounding your community. Did you live in fear?
No, I didn't live in fear, but there is something very important that has to be said about that. My family, and I suppose the other families in the community, had cultural ways of defanging the threat that was always around us. As a child, you watch your mama and you watch your daddy, and they give you the cues as to what things are, whether they are threatening, and how to deal with them. So I had a very strong daddy. Now, my daddy did attract the attention and opposition of the Ku Klux Klan. They thought that daddy was holding down a white man's job, and they, on two occasions, made threats as if to kill him. Still in all, there was, though there was fear in surrounding communities, I, as a child, took my cues as to how to respond to the fear from daddy and mama. Now, what they did was, in a sense, to pre-digest those elements in the environment that might threaten the children and then feed them to us at the proper time and the proper place, along with an attitude about how to respond to them. At the dinner table, we not only had food, but there was conversation, there was humor, there was joke telling. And in all of that, they gave us attitudes and they placed in perspective all the things in our environment, and they taught us directly or by implication how to live with them. My father was a heroic figure of a man, and my mother was a beautiful woman. I remember on one occasion when I was a small child, and the Ku Klux Klan, had stuck a stick in front of the house and split the head of the stick and put a letter in the split. And I found it and took it to Mama, and she could read a little, and the letter indicated that they were going to come to get Daddy and kill him. So Daddy was working 2 miles up the railroad with his construction gang. So Mama put the letter and his pistol in her bosom and walked the 2 miles up the road to give him the letter and the pistol. So as a child, I saw things that had horrible implications, but I also saw a positive response to them. So I absorbed that kind of response. So there was fear, but it wasn't palpable and didn't reach directly into me. There was always Daddy who laughed a lot, and Mama who was warm and smiled and smelled good and could cook and also tell us stories. And it was quite a comfortable, safe, and secure life for me as a little black boy in Georgia.